What's up, sales coaching friends? This is Brian. I'm the co-founder and COO at Ambition, and I'm really excited to walk you through a really quick video today about moving the middle 70% and why it's really important to focus your sales culture and your sales coaching program on how to drive a more effective team, especially in the middle section of your organization. And I think one thing to talk about is it's really common for folks to spend the majority of their time focused on two groups when you think about their sales team. They focus the top performers because it's fun, and those folks have a different set of challenges that require creativity and removing roadblocks. And it's very rewarding to focus on people at the bottom of the organization. So maybe it's folks who haven't quite ramped yet. Maybe it's people who are struggling. A lot of us in sales, we have big hearts and we want to go in there and make a change in someone's life, figure out how to get them to be more effective. But what I'm going to talk about really quickly today is why you have to shift your mindset and really put more attention and more effort into maximizing the middle group. And we're going to look at why that matters. So this is a kind of a breakdown of the bell curve of how a sales organization looks. We deal with hundreds of dynamic sales organizations, I think the best in the world, customers, and we see this time and time again. If you look at performance across a subset of people at the top, maybe 10 to 20%, you're going to see a subset of people who are kind of at the bottom. And then you're going to have the mass majority of folks right in the middle. In this case, that kind of shades of green before you get to the 90 to 100 percentile. That's where you want to spend your time and your energy. And we're going to give you a couple quick ways today of how to affect those folks. I believe it starts with culture. And culture is a buzzword. It's out there all the time on LinkedIn. Everyone's talking about it on their videos and their blogs and their Twitter. But it really doesn't matter. I'm going to tell you why. When you build a culture, you're incorporating, we think, three legs of a really powerful stool for your sales team to rely on, and for you as a leadership team to be able to use to change performance. One of those legs is clear KPIs, very visible performance, transparency, and accountability. Second is a robust, sustainable coaching program. And the third is contest, behavior change, engagement that kind of refocus people on the cycle and make sure that they're all not only at the level you hope they do, but they're exceeding that and they're performing at the level that they want to as a professional. We're going to talk about all three of these sections because I really believe that as far as your middle 70% goes, this is where these things can really affect them. And you can really use these legs of the stool to enable them and accelerate performance, hopefully get them higher up. Even if they're never going to be your number one performer, that's okay. Number one's pretty special. If you've got a lot of people who are used to do a month or two or three quarters ago, you'll probably feel pretty good as a sales leader. And starting with the KPI side, every organization walks into that we have these things set, and while I think most people would say, hey, I know the goal, they know what their quota is or what target is, do I need? It's actually pretty powerful to get deeper than that, and we'll talk through why setting those clear goals and KPIs is really important and how to do it. Start at the top. You probably have that. I think this is a given for almost every sales leader we've ever talked to. You set the target of the group, whether that's an inside seller, whether that's a sales development team, whether that's a field rep, account manager. Set the goal. It could be revenue in this case. It could be a pipeline created for a sales development person. It could be meeting set even if it's a demand gen type of role. But you set that North Star goal, and that's what you build back from. So step two, once you have that goal in mind, $1 million in closed won deals or $5 million of pipeline or 200 meetings set this year, whatever it is, you start setting it backwards in thinking about the conversions that it takes to get there. For every meeting that happens that gets set at your company, it takes 5 conversations to have one that goes great and you get a meeting from it, you start thinking about those conversions backwards. And what you want to do is ultimately step 3. You want to mark specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound goals for each of the roles in your organization. And when you get carried away with thinking about micromanaging or over metricing people, you know, the thing I think that we've kind of said, once you have some of these SMART goals set for your organization, it's actually really freeing because it gives all of the power to the rep. My Apple Watch, like I set my rings, I set my targets of steps and activity and all that kind of stuff, and now it's on me. It's not on someone else checking. I have all the access. I have all the data to say, man, if I haven't closed one of these rings, I'm going to go home and take my dog for a walk at the end of the day because I want to do it. Back to me to go achieve that. And by setting these from the revenue goal backwards, it should give your people a very clear path to success on a the year-long basis, on a quarter-long basis, month, down to hopefully the day or the week, where they know what do I do right now or today or this week that's going to help me get towards my ultimate goal, which is X. Coaching. So let's talk about coaching. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the do's and the don'ts because I think, as I mentioned before, at the high end, the folks who are really overachieving or doing excellent, those people have a great system in play. They already know what they're doing. You may need to come in and give them some air cover, give them some extra support, figure out how to unlock some things for them. And at the lower end of performers, that's a different conversation too. Getting those people back on the plan and back into the right level of achievement is a different conversation. But in the middle, it's all about consistency. And it's about bringing a playbook that's going to work week in, week out, month in, month out for the mass majority of your reps. And let's talk about some of the what to not to do first. Step 1, to annual reviews. We hear this time and time again. It really pains me because, what I like to think about is when I, the address in to go somewhere when I'm driving. If I set that in my phone on Google Maps and I didn't ever check for the hour, I would look at it, didn't see how we were progressing, didn't know what my next turn was, where I was supposed to go, I may as well not have done it. And times when we hear there's people who they say, yeah, we do performance reviews, we talk about metrics, but we do it once or twice a year. If you're only doing it once or twice a year and you're expecting people to hit quota, I just don't think they're going to have enough time to course correct when things aren't going the way they need to be. So you need to have much more consistent communication. We'll talk about that in a second. Coaching, something I've been guilty of in the past. I don't think you should have coaching sessions that are overly formal or need to feel like intimidating, but they should be an actual session. It should be scheduled. It should be something that folks prepare for. And what I've done in the past is I'm just here and I say, hey, you want to go grab a coffee, or you want to go walk to the place for lunch where we get our burritos down here. And that's fine. Like, that's really important. I think that's great. Great managers and great leaders should do that. They should know their people. But that shouldn't be the only coaching that folks get from you, is like on the 10-minute walk, while most of the time you're talking about what did you do last weekend, how's the family. That stuff is important, but instead of just the drive-by session or the water cooler coaching, as I like to call it. And last but not least, no data silos. So I've talked about this in the Moses experience that I had as a rep almost a decade ago now. But managers and leaders shouldn't be the only ones who have access to what's happening and how the data looks for each of the reps on their team. If I show up to a coaching session or a review and I don't know where I stand or how I'm doing versus my target goals, it's a really one-sided conversation. Similarly, if my team lead or a manager walks in to have that session and it's the first time they're looking at kind of like, oh, I see you didn't do X, or I see you're having trouble here, that doesn't feel like a great session. I really think people should be prepared to have access to the data as real as possible, and both parties should be walking into that meeting really aware of what we're going to talk about. to flip this, what you should be doing, I think this is really the middle 70%, is when you're doing a coaching program, they should be in a similar or the same format almost every time. You could have different layers of these. You have, 1 or 2 monthly sessions. Maybe you have a more in-depth quarterly session. Maybe you have a much more in-depth annual session. But at least you're having these kind of recurring, programs where you're going to talk about specific types of things in the organization. They definitely should be scheduled out ahead of time. I shouldn't just do a pop-up that day and be prepared either as a leader or as a rep that I'm going to have flying from the cuff. I want to use data. So once again, because I've lined this up out ahead of time, both parties should have all key performance indicators, KPIs. They should have the metrics. They should have ideally what attainment looks like across a variety of different metrics. Where am I versus my specific targets? And there should be no surprises when we walk in. Even better is when you're adding text to that data. So I like to send questions ahead of time and say, here are the few things that I really want to know. What's going great? What's going not great? How could you best utilize me? What's an opportunity that went really well? What's an opportunity that went really sideways? Why? I want as much context as possible into the data. So that to point number 3 here, we both show up really prepared. Now we're right into the conversation. No trouble with doing the catch up on the family, that kind of stuff. Where you go in the summer, that's cool. You should do it. But if you've got a 30 or 45-minute meeting, which most of our folks talk how long their coaching session lasts, let's get as much of that time dedicated to here's what happened, here's how we can fix it, here's what we're doing going forward. Our 4th point, which is actually set and record action items. I can't tell you how many times we hear about folks saying, I meet with my team and we talk about how we're going to do an opportunity different or how we're going to change where our situation is in this deal. And then it doesn't happen. And we ask, well, how did you record it? What was the takeaway from this? Was it just like hey, do better next time? Or hey, can you go? Or did you actually set something where you said, hey, let's get this decision maker on the phone by Thursday next week? It's actually something we can hold each other accountable to. Managers should be accountable to action items too. So if they say, I really need help walking through a better demo that sells this value proposition, this solution, they should be responsible to provide that or to help out in the time they have between the next session. So both parties should be accountable to action items, record them, and commit to them. Otherwise, it's unlikely they're going to happen. Last but not least, that contest part sometimes is really counterintuitive because folks say, well, they're my top reps are kind of winning all the contests, or they're showing up on the leaderboards, or they're getting incentives. What do I do for my middle folks who may not show up? Well, the answer is you've got to be a little bit more creative. And I think that the modern sales leader is in a challenging position because you've got the majority of your org there in the middle. And if you get them to perform a little bit better, especially across that whole funnel of sales process, activities, and conversion rates, it's going to have a much bigger lift than if you just keep giving prizes to the people who are already great. So you can, I think, upgrade your incentives. And there's some great companies out there doing this. There's some great research that we've done. But as our VP of sales told me a couple quarters ago when gave me some feedback I didn't really love, but I said Amazon gift cards are the grandmother of them. And I think that it's overplayed, it's boring, our reps don't get up and excited to come to work and win a $20 that's really going to impact them, and that it's not something they can just go do for themselves. Their comp plan already kind of covers this kind of stuff. What's outside the comp plan? An example of something that we've done, and I'll give you some context about the creativity here, is we give a billboard. This is our 3rd year doing it. Martin McWaters was actually the winner of this billboard a couple years ago. And he got to pick whatever he wanted on this digital billboard in downtown Nashville. I thought it was insane. That's not actually his body. That is his head. Full game at the time was not very good. But the reason this was so impactful, he had all the decision making. He told him anything he wanted up there. Just had to have a com in the corner. Couldn't be offensive. But he got text messages, LinkedIn messages, Twitter mentions from this, and people loved it. And he loved it because it actually mattered to him. I could have given him, all of this money on Amazon, and he would have probably bought some cool stuff for his 2-year-old. But he was already getting that from having a great year comp plan. And the second part is that this contest was all about pipeline creation, quarter-over-quarter. Who's the best closer, who's closing the most deals, who's creating the most opportunities. We looked at who could improve the most, Q2, 3. And I think that brings up a really, really important thing is it's true that you only have 10 to 25% of people who are probably going to be on a leaderboard like this, are going to show up on a contest, we're going to be the top attainment person. So as a sales leader, you have to think outside the box and think something a little bit more dynamic of who has the biggest lift in a given metric quarter over quarter, or who is the most improved quarter over quarter, month over month, or year over year. Those are things where people who may not have typically won a contest before or been at the top for now have a real opportunity to be highlighted. And that's really empowering because a lot of your folks in the middle, they're still on the up, may have hopefully not peaked, but even if they have, that recognition is something they crave, and it's going to tap into, what they want the VP of sales to walk by a leaderboard like this. And even though that VP of sales may know that, Brian isn't the top seller this quarter or isn't the top SDR this month, if he sees that I have the biggest performance improvement month over month, or I have, the most set increase from last quarter, that's something big that he can go say, hey, great work. You're really trying. You're going out there and doing it. And 45 or top 10%. And I really believe in that that delta and that improvement score is an area where sales leaders can start to highlight, give them that recognition, that kind of spike of dopamine that especially the millennial folks are really looking for. So to touch on it one more time, building is something that's going to really help that middle 70% because you're going to get people bought into what we need to do. They're all together. You need them. They're the your folks. So clarity, transparency, accountability into what we're doing and how they break into it this year, this quarter, this month, this week, ideally today, is really important. Consistent coaching, not spending all of your time on, the bookends, top performers, and unfortunately the bottom performers, but spending a lot of time, ideally the majority of time, in the middle, getting those people a little bit more effective, a little bit more productive. It's going to have a big impact across multiple bodies. And then actually being creative in the contests and incentives and recognition programs that you run, not just ignoring the mass majority of your folks. You're thinking of, in addition, ways that you can tap into their dopamine centers and their, excitement of being recognized by the CEO walking down a hallway or getting an email that says, Brian was the most improved this month. That's great. That's the kind of stuff that's going to get people to work with you and get out of bed in the morning. And we believe it's going to really impact your team. So that's all I have today. Thank you guys joining me, and thanks for stopping by and joining the course.